Hi everyone, welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. Another opposition preview. This time it's the turn of Fulham, and I've got Jack Kelly from Fulhamish Pod, also a freelance journalist who covers Fulham. Jack, thank you for coming onto the show today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So Fulham's 11th in the table, 2 points behind Bournemouth in 8th. So not a million miles away from where you want to be. But would you have thought going into this part of the season? You mentioned there that at times it's been good and bad. Are you surprised with how you've done the season? Do you think looking back on it next season you'll have thought this was a success, or do you think maybe looking back on it you're going to be wanting to obviously go one better next season?
It's really hard with Fulham at the moment because the fan expectation is surpassing what realism expectation should be. And if you think about perspective and you think about where we've been in the last 5 to 10 years, which has been Championship and Premier League and Championship and Premier League, like I said, like to establish yourself as a Premier League team was the goal of Marco Silva when he came into the club to get us promoted and establish us. And he basically has done that whilst giving us some cup runs along the way. 2 quarterfinals, 1 semi-final, 2 quarterfinals FA Cup, 1 semi-final Carabao Cup. But because of the sort of impatient nature of fan bases, not only Fulham, but anyone around in England or around the world, that you always want more quicker. And I think that the impatience with managers, impatience with ambition is always it's always like give it to me now, as opposed to okay, I can bide my time and see the project sort of working out in 2, 3, 4 years time. If the dust settles after 38 games and we don't get Europe, there's going to be a lot of disappointment for sure, because we've got our hopes up and because hope is the biggest killer, really. And what you can say at the end of the season is, if you want to have a sensible hat on, is, well, look, we've come up to the Premier League, we've beaten the yo-yo allegations, and we're now going to a 4th season in the Premier League, hoping to kick on. But the worry is that as of today and yesterday, I'm seeing rumours of Marco Silva, who's still got another year in his contract. He might be going off to Saudi Arabia. I don't believe it will happen. I think those reports are an absolute nonsense because of the fact he turned it down 2 years ago and he was offered £40 million a year, and he said no, he wants to stay in the Premier League. If he wants to leave Fulham and he thinks he's come to the end of his cycle, I could probably understand it. Not getting Europe and running a little bit out of energy, and you've sort of seen through the project that you were assigned to do in the first place. But I don't see him going to Al Hilal. I know Mitrovic is there, but I don't see the link there at all. I just think it's a case of he's going to wait for a bigger job in England, and if he did go to Saudi Arabia, I think that would be a sort of a contradiction to what he's basically said all season, which is about his ambition. But yeah, it's been a strange season because the outside looking in, you go, well, Fulham have had a great season, but the fan base is really disappointed right now because they feel like we should be doing so much more.
Well, if you're looking at it, is there a bit of an apprehension around the fan base? Because with Everton at the minute, we're in such a sort of horrible, dire place where we just can't seem to really get anything going. That really there's not much to lose besides staying in the division. With your club at the moment and how positive it's been at times this season and how well the club's doing off the pitch and on it, is there a bit of an apprehension that if you don't get into Europe, it might start falling down a little bit? Or do you think, like you said there, where you mentioned fans want everything right now, do you think that there is a bit of breathing room to finish 9th this season, not get in to the Europa League or the Conference League, and go one better next year instead of people diving up straight onto Marco Silva if you don't get there?
I think that there's 2 sides to it. I think that definitely, like, if we were to finish 9th and not get into Europe, it's still a very good finish. We're aiming for top half, and that's what we got. 1 win is going to see us surpass our all-time Premier League points tally as well, which is fantastic if we hit 54. But the feeling amongst fans is that, well, look, if Fulham, who don't have the biggest budget in the Premier League, if we finish the season, miss out on European football, is that our last chance? Because teams are going to get much stronger. You look at Tottenham, you look at Manchester United, and you look at teams who are competing with us, Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, Villa. They're all going to get stronger. Everton will get stronger with their new stadium, and then the expectation will go up at Everton as well. I wouldn't say we might miss the boat, but it could all come down like a deck of cards. If we don't get Europe, Silva could be swayed and move elsewhere. If it's to Saudi Arabia, it's to Saudi Arabia. If it's not, then we'll see. He's, like I say, he's still got another year in his contract. I expect to see out that contract, given he spoke so much about honouring contracts. Of course, that wasn't quite the case when Everton came calling at Watford, but I think he's learned his lesson from then. I don't know. I really don't know. I think, I just go back to that sort of impatient line that I'm peddling at the moment, which is that fans get impatient and fans become more reactionary because they see the bright lights of West Ham winning the Conference League and they go, well, why can't we do that if we were to get into the Conference League? And they'll see probably Chelsea win the Conference League this year. One of Tottenham and Man United will probably win the Europa League this year. And I know obviously we can't compete with those sort of top 6 teams at this moment in time, but the opportunity was there to get into Europe. And we'll look back on games like Everton, we'll look back on games like West Ham and other games as well where we've dropped points. We've dropped so many points in winning positions. And there is a case to be said that Fulham should have got Europe this season. There was a case that Fulham should be where Nottingham Forest are this season as well. I know that obviously they've sort of dipped down the table a little bit, Forest, but if we'd have held on to these leads and seen out games properly, then we would have had. It's easy to say that now. It happens every season that fans will look back on individual games and as moments that's cost them. But I don't feel like fans will fans have started to sort of question Silva about his substitutions, decision making, and also comments after the game. Because I tap up the quotes after the game, and it's quite repetitive sometimes with the things he says after certain defeats or even wins as well. And I think fans, managerial spells usually aren't about 4 years, 5 years in this modern age of football. And I think that with one manager, when you're seeing the same quotes over and over and over again, you are going to grow a little bit tiresome of that. That being said, he's done a remarkable job at Fulham. And it does just come back to this sort of ungrateful culture that football fans have, that they sort of don't realise what they had until they lost it. Very much the case with West Ham when they had David Moyes and lost David Moyes, because it's all gone to shit. I'm sorry, excuse my language, but it's all gone to pot really since Moyes left the club. And then I spoke to a West Ham fan earlier this season, and I said I think that Moyes leaving was a massive mistake for West Ham, and the fans were really unhappy with what I said because they think, oh well, we got Lopetegui, but well, you see how that worked out, and you see what happened with Graham Potter the other day against Brighton. He completely lost his rag in front of the media. So look, I've gone on for a huge tangent, but I think that the point being is that as football fans, we need to be a little bit more grounded, less emotional, which is obviously very, very hard to do. But overall, Marco Silva's been an absolutely wonderful manager for Fulham.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of qualified to talk about that as well, because of course at Everton he did have a pretty good season, finished in 8th his first season. And we had like big wins against the likes of Manchester United and things like that, and he signed some good players in Richarlison. The club was in a really, really, really strange time when he came in, because obviously we had the famous summer where we signed 3 number 10s. We had, money was wasted a lot by Farhad Moshiri. And he came in, and I think he probably did the best he could do. And I think a lot of Evertonians will agree that Marco Silva didn't get a fair shot at Everton, and he was sacked too early. But unfortunately, back in 2019, when he was sacked, Everton were aiming for a much different finish in the table. And also, like you mentioned there, people just couldn't see anything that wasn't in front of their eyes. But I'd be interested to hear what people in the comment section think about Marco Silva, because he's a manager that has sort of split opinion. But I mean, I remember his teams playing pretty well, and he signed some good players. Fulham this season, sort of getting towards the end now, what's been the best moment for Fulham this season? And the best players, of course, there's one that really stands out to me, ex-Everton, is Anthony Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson is wonderful player. I remember on the way back from Anfield, being on a train back to London with a load of Liverpool fans, and they were basically saying, well, that's our Robertson replacement, as if they have a God-given right to sign Anthony Robinson. Look, they need to concentrate more on keeping their own talent in Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's leaving on a free. So I think that, Robinson's been fantastic. Him and Iwobi, first half of the season, down the left-hand side, combining quite magnificently. Like, Iwobi's fallen off a little bit, and I think that's just because he's played so much football, and a lot of energy's gone. Even Anthony Robinson, who missed the Saints game because he's got a knee injury, and we're sort of trying to manage that ahead of the summer, where he is obviously going to want to play for USA, and obviously pre-season. I think he's got to have an operation as well. So for me, Robinson's been fantastic. I think Sessegnon in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks has been unbelievable coming back into the team as well. Rodrigo Muniz, I mean, there's been loads of players. Sander Berger, Sasha Lukic, they've all been absolutely unbelievable. Calvin Bassey, fantastic. Leno, as always, brilliant. But highlight of the season for Fulham has got to be going to the Bridge on Boxing Day and beating them lot down the road in the last minute. I know they obviously did the same to us in added time at the Cottage, but at that moment, it was a great moment to be a Fulham fan, beating Chelsea from behind. First time we won there in, God knows, first time we'd scored there in about 13 years, maybe even more, 14 years. Great moment. Lots of great moments this season, but Chelsea away for me, 100%.
Yeah, I'd expect you to say that, to be honest. You can have good moments, but they're great moments, aren't they? So looking at Fulham going into the summer, just before we start to talk about Everton, what is going to be, for you, the big part of the team that needs to be strengthened in the summer, and how are Fulham going to kick on from this season that's had, a bit of a learning curve and move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think that the wide options, I think we've been quite unlucky with injuries in the wide options. We've had injuries to Reece Nelson, who got injured in December. He's basically out for the whole season. He basically came back from injury in training ahead of the game, and then got another injury in the other leg, and has been injured for the rest of the season. He's gone back to Arsenal for his rehabilitation. Harry Wilson got injured as well. Sessegnon's not been fully fit as well this season. Traore's been out a couple of times. So yeah, I think signing a proper quality winger would be, well, one of the priorities. We also need to sign Kenny Tete down to a new contract, and then look at the right back situation. I think left back, I don't know about Robinson in terms of, it's all gone a little bit quiet as to his future, but I think in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we're going to understand a little bit more about what's going to happen with him this summer. I think we probably need one more midfielder, maybe another profile of striker. I think Rodrigo Muniz is probably good enough to be the number 9 going forward. He was given the number 9 shirt at the beginning of the season. Raul Jimenez is getting on a bit. We have an option to trigger his contract for an extra year. I don't think he'll necessarily be the best second choice. So I think a different style of striker to bring in as well. So the wide options, striker, we need to look at. Right back. Centre-backs were okay. I think we've got a decent 4 centre-backs right now. I'm pretty happy with. Midfield maybe needs 1 or 2 more. If we lose Pereira, of course, a number 10 maybe needs to come in. Emil Smith-Rowe needs to step up a little bit more next season for sure. But we need someone to back him up. So there's lots of work to do at Fulham this summer, which is why having managerial distractions with Marcus Silva, not knowing where he's going to be, it doesn't really help our situation. So yeah, it's a bit of panic stations at Fulham. I think once 38 games are up and the dust settles, I think everyone's going to start panicking about contracts and transfers.
So Everton is a bit of a weird one to talk about this season because, like you mentioned, David Moyes come back in. Just tell me a bit what it's like being like for you, because a team like Fulham, who are doing so well and look like there's a real still, with 3 games left, still chance of them getting into Europe. You'll remember that Fulham qualified for the first ever Europa League campaign with Everton as well back in 2009. So really, we're the type of team that was always sort of under David Moyes fighting with the likes of Fulham and Aston Villa to be in the Europa League, and even sometimes going for the Champions League. So it's a really weird one, isn't it? We're a weird team to watch, I think, from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, Everton, the beginning of the season, obviously under Dyche, I remember being at Ipswich and you guys were 2-0 up to Bournemouth, and I thought that's a good way to get your first win of the season, just beating Bournemouth. And then suddenly I look at the result at full time and they're 3-2 down. And obviously the same thing happens, I think, a week later against Aston Villa. It seemed to be a common sort of trend that Everton were giving away leads and dropping points in quite sloppy fashion. But I think the change was needed at the right time. I think it came at the right time. And in my mind, when Dyche got sacked, there was only one name that was going to come in, and that was David Moyes. It was, the narrative was all there. I think he's done brilliantly. I think he's done such a great job. The Merseyside derby against Liverpool was one, a terrific game of football, two, high in drama, and I want Everton to. I didn't want Everton to go down, given the new stadium was coming next season, and I thought that they'd made the change at the right time. And I thought Moyes was the perfect man to guide them to stay up. And in the end, it's been pretty comfortable. Everton haven't really looked like they were going to go down really since Moyes came in after maybe 3 or 4 or 5 games, and they started going on a run. They were always going to be pretty okay. I think the bottom 3 have made it pretty obvious who was going down this season. Ipswich at the weekend put up a really good fight against Everton, coming back from 2. Again, another example of Everton dropping points and winning positions, albeit some decent goals were scored by Ipswich. I think if you're an Everton fan, maybe going into the summer, it's all about, well, let's not go into this new stadium on a downward trajectory. Let's not go into the new stadium like West Ham did. And I remember it being really, really difficult for them to adjust to the London Stadium. They started picking up really poor results. Obviously, Goodison Park is, for me, one of my favourite grounds to go to. It's been an unbelievable experience to go there a few times. And I'm going to miss it. I'm sure Everton fans are going to miss it. I think it'll be a really emotional day when they play Southampton at Goodison for the final time. And I think they're going to cause us some issues on Saturday. It's a game we obviously have to win. But yeah, huge respect for David Moyes, who I believe should take Everton forward into the new stadium next season.
So just before we get towards the end, let's talk a bit about Saturday. Let's talk about Fulham and Everton. Let's at the lineup for Fulham. I mean, really, you mentioned there that Sessegnon's come in and done well. How do you think Fulham are going to line up, and who's the real danger man at the moment for Fulham?
It's hard to say. I think we'll go with Leno in goal, Robinson, Bassi, Anderson, Tete, Sashuin as our back 4, back 5. I think it'll be Lukic, Berger in midfield. Pereira's had a knock and he didn't play the last game, so I think we might go with Wilson in the 10 or Iwobi in the 10 and then Wilson on the left, and I think Sessegnon will start on the right. That seems to be how we're going at the moment. I'd like to see Traore start. I think he's better from the start than off the bench, but I'm not sure. I think Sessegnon's probably earned another start, and he was subbed quite early on in the game last week because he had a yellow card, which fans weren't very happy about. Moon is obviously not involved, so he's going to be out for the season. So if it would be Raul Jimenez up top, I think that's how we'd go. Smith Rowe in the 10 would be nice. He played really well against Everton last time we came to Goodison Park. But I think Iwobi could occupy that position. Wilson out wide with Sessegnons on the other side. I think that's going to create a lot of chances for Fulham and a lot of creativity. Albeit I wouldn't mind if Smith Rowe played as well. That's exactly how I would line up for Fulham.
So score predictions. I mean, personally, for me, I think our season's pretty much over at this point. We're in a very different position to Fulham, whereas Fulham are still trying to fight for that chance of getting Europe. Score predictions for the weekend.
I think we will win. I know the last 2 times you've been to the Cottage, it was been 0-0 draws. So I think we will win by 2-1. I think we'll take the lead. You'll equalise through Iliman Ndiaye, who's probably one of my favourite players to watch for Everton, and I think we'll get a winner in the second half. But it feels like it might be quite a somber mood at Craven Cottage, even if Fulham were to win, because we're currently always looking at other results now, seeing if other teams can do a job for us, and so we can pip. Brentford go to Ipswich the weekend. We're going to be looking for Ipswich to get a result, even though they're already down. So it's a lot of doing our own job and then relying on other teams to drop points as well, which is always quite a difficult situation to be in. Winning going into the Brentford derby would be huge. So I'll go 2-1 Fulham.
Yeah, I think that game against Ipswich last weekend is really it's knocked the stuffing out of me a little bit, to be honest. 2-0 up. It looked like we were just going to have our day in the sun and get a result going into, the penultimate game at Goodison. And we were just too lackadaisical and thought the game was over when it wasn't. So there's definitely something to prove for these Everton players, but to be honest with you, Jack, I think maybe half of them might be here come next season. It's going to be a huge clear out at Everton over the summer. I'm hopeful we might get something, but to be honest, I could probably see a Fulham win. I think just put everything into that Southampton game because we don't want to lose the last one at Goodison now. So going back to the COVID season for our lineup quiz, Fulham versus Everton, 22nd of November 2020. It finished 3-2 to Everton. I remember this one. We wore I think we wore the sort of amber and blue kit. The couple of players in the Fulham squad who are still sort of in and around that team at the moment now. How many do you think you can get?
Yeah, at the starting 11.
Yeah, you can have the starting 11, but I'll give you some off the bench if you get them as well.
Well, I remember who scored for Fulham that day. That was Bobby Reid and Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Mm-hmm.
I think we missed a penalty through Ivan Cavallero as well, I seem to remember. Because Everton scored after about a minute. I think Calvert-Lewin might have scored after about a minute. So I think the lineup that day, going off the trends of that season, was probably Areola in goal with... we played a 5. We also played a 3. So it will be... I'll go Anderson, Tossin, and... Oh, who's the other centre back? I can't remember now. Okay, so it'll be, I think, Ola Anderson, Tossin. Who the hell played at centre back? Robinson left back. It probably wasn't even Robinson. It probably was Robinson, actually.
It was Robinson, yeah.
Was there a third centre back? We were playing 3 or 4.
I think this player might have played at centre back, but he might have been in midfield. He sort of moves between the two, I think, but I think he was more a midfielder.
Okay. In that case, I'll go with a 4. So Areola, Robinson, Anya, Tossin, Anderson, and then it might have been Ream. Ream could have played.
Tim Ream was on the bench.
Okay, so in midfield, I would go with Lookman, Harrison Reed, Anguissa.
Yeah. Anguissa was on the bench. It was a different midfielder. But
TC,
Reed and Tom Kearney was there, yeah. And there's one more midfielder who, like I said, might have been playing in defence. I'm not too sure.
Might have been playing in defence. Kenny Tete?
No.
Is that right back?
Tete on the bench. Tete wasn't even in the squad. No. Still in the Premier League. Still in the Premier League with another club.
Bobby D. Cordova-Reid.
D. Cordova-Reid's one of them. There's one more and you've got the whole lot.
Cavallero, obviously, took a pen. Loftus-Cheek. Still in the
Loftus-Cheek came on.
Come off the bench, yeah.
Come off the bench. This player that you're missing came off in the 69th minute for Anguissa.
Still playing in the Prem for another team?
Yeah, you're going to kick yourself.
Not Joe Bryan. He's not in the Prem.
Joe Bryan was on the bench as well.
Interesting. Mitrovic obviously was probably on the bench.
He was on the bench.
I don't think he was involved.
He was on the bench. He came on for Tom Kearney in the 60th minute.
Classic Scott Parker not playing our best striker. I actually... I'll kick...
You'll kick yourself, but I think you've done well.
Who's he play for? He
plays for Wolves now.
Oh, Mario Lemina.
Yeah.
He doesn't even play for Wolves anymore. He's in.
Does he not?
He's in Saudi Arabia, I think.
Oh, he's moved on. I'm getting confused with Andre. They seem to have signed like an exact copy of player there with him, like a big, a little number 6. But you did pretty well there, Jack. I think Cavallero's one I would have forgot about. I couldn't even remember Ola playing for Fulham. Tossin, I probably could remember. Couldn't remember Areola, but that's a pretty good result there for you. The Everton team. I mean, cover your ears, Everton fans, because this one will probably upset you a little bit. It was Ancelotti was the manager. It was Pickford, Keane, Mina, Luca Dean, Ben Godfrey, Alan, Decore, James Rodriguez, Calvert-Lewin, Alex Iwobi, and Richarlison. So yeah. Some players in there that we could have done with on Saturday. But just before we finish, Jack, I've asked lots of fans from other clubs this season, if you were to build the Mount Rushmore of your club, so the 4 biggest names in your club's history to put on a mountain, who would it be?
Oh, that's tough. I think I was only born in 1998, but I can appreciate fans' knowledge of the club and the history. So it'll have to be someone like. It'll have to be Johnny Haynes. I'd have to say, I wouldn't say George Best because he didn't play for Fulham for that long. Roy Hodgson. Probably someone like Tom Kearney. He's been here for 10 years and he's really transformed the fortunes of the club, and people like recency bias as well. Oh, Marco Silva, probably not. I mean, yes, I would like to put him there, but maybe someone like Breda Hangland, someone like that. Someone who was really, or maybe Danny Murphy. Danny Murphy, because he scored that big goal against Portsmouth to keep us up in 2008. I think people would disagree with a lot of what I've just said, but yeah, you'd have to give me a little bit more time to think about that. But
Yeah.
off the top of my head,
Well, that's one for you to go away and discuss with all the Fulham supporters, because I'm sure they'll all have different ones. That Fulham team in like sort of 08, 09, 09, 10 was absolutely brilliant to watch. Remember like Sidwell, Hangeland, all players like that. And you know, one of my favourite times to watch Everton as well. So Fulham was always a really tough game for us. But I used to love Craven Cottage at a night game. It was always one of the best places to watch football. So, Jack, tell us where we can find all of your content.
Yeah, so Fulhamish podcast. I'm on there semi-regularly. I think I've done my own thing in terms of I've set up a Patreon to sort of fund my independent covering of Fulham, which is really, really fun. So yeah, it's very like different to what you'd see from, you know, regular fan outlets and stuff like press conferences and interviews with players and stuff like that. So yeah, I've loved doing that this season. You can follow me on Twitter at Jakelly FFC, JACKELLY FFC. And yeah, Patreon. I'm sure no Everton fans can subscribe to my Patreon because it just doesn't benefit them. But yeah, if you want to check it out, at least that's where I am at.
Yeah, make sure you go and drop some likes and comments on all of Jack's content. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Of course, Evertonians, make sure you get your score predictions in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe to the Toffee Blues, and I'll see you in the next one.